Everyone loves a good twist in a true crime case. The more shocking, the better. These 5 true criminal cases feature random twists that you would never see coming. Number 5. In September of 2004, Carl Charlie Brandt committed a gruesome crime, too graphic to describe in detail. He took the life of his wife, Terry Brandt, and his young niece. After creating such a haunting mess, he took his own life in the garage, where he was later found by police. As with any investigation, detectives began digging into Charlie's past. They quickly found that this wasn't his first killing. In 1971, when Charlie was only 13, he fired at his parents with a weapon. His mother passed away, but thankfully his father survived after a long, challenging recovery. Charlie was apprehended for the crime and forced into a mental institution, where he lived for a year and supposedly improved. He was never criminally charged for his crimes, and after his release, he carried on with life as though none of it had ever happened. He eventually met a woman, fell in love, and got married. There were no confirmed reports of him ever being violent or abusive towards his wife or relatives in the years leading up to this tragedy, which threw investigators for a loop. It would seem that at the time, the case was nothing more than a one-off tragedy that closed no sooner than it opened. That is, until a wild twist in the case was discovered. Crime scene investigators and medical examiners were fascinated with the condition of the niece's body. While we can't say much, it was clear to these officials that the process was similar to that of a trained surgeon or an expert killer. Essentially, this led detectives to believe that Charlie didn't just randomly return back to killing, with this much apparent practice under his belt. Additionally, they found out Charlie subscribed to Victoria's Secret catalogs and had an extensive collection of surgery-themed books, posters, and clippings, and regularly searched online for autopsy photos and snuff film websites depicting violence against women. In a twist of events, they realized that Charlie had more than likely committed more crimes between his release and his death. Charlie frequently traveled around Florida and other nearby states for work, so police checked into unsolved cases in the region that may have matched this killing style. Detectives also issued a nationwide inquiry into cases with similar conditions. Charlie was later linked to about 26 unsolved cases for various reasons. Sadly, only 4 of them could be confirmed. These cases occurred between 1978 and 1995, not counting the 2004 case. The experts believe that the span of his crimes actually stretched from 1971 to the day that he passed away. Police were expecting an isolated case of a deranged man, and instead a twist in the road led them down a path of a serial killer. Number 4. 27-year-old Lauren Giddings was a successful law student, one test away from becoming a full-fledged lawyer when she vanished in June of 2011. After she failed to attend several study group meetings and didn't return any phone calls for 4 days, her peers began to worry and contacted police. Officers assumed that she wasn't home, and while they weren't allowed to break through the door without a warrant, they assured her friends that there were no signs of foul play. Her sister, Caitlin Wheeler, wasn't happy with that answer. Caitlin contacted a close friend of Lauren and requested that they use their spare key to inspect the apartment. While there was no shocking or gruesome violence, Lauren's most important belongings, such as her purse, keys, wallet, and school ID, had been left behind. This was a huge red flag for Caitlin, and she pushed to file a missing persons report and open a search effort. During this search and investigation, a diverse team of people came together to help find evidence and possibly locate the victim. One person in the search was Lauren's peer and neighbor, Stephen McDaniel. In this particular interview that went viral, the reporter informed Stephen that human body parts had been found inside of a trash bin. His jaw drops and his eyes widen in shock as the reporter tries to backtrack, but it's too late. He claims that he needs to sit down, but footage from later that day shows him putting on a dramatic performance in an effort to attribute his shaken state to the tragic news and not the possibility of being caught. After the remains were confirmed to be Lauren's, investigators were cued by the interview to consider Stephen a person of interest. He was charged and convicted in November of 2011. While the public was shocked to see this twist, reporters had poured in after Stephen's arrest, depicting him as being a stalker and creep that harassed Lauren. Number 3. This case involves the shocking true identity of a convicted murderer's wife. Now 76-year-old Franklin Delano is on death row for the murder of one woman and the kidnapping of his own son. However, there's no crime he wasn't charged for. despite being the prime suspect in a hit-and-run murder of his wife, Sharon Marshall. The couple were married in 1989 and had a child together. Shortly thereafter, they moved from Florida to Oklahoma, where Franklin held down a steady job and became a member of the Fraternal Order of Police. Sharon worked as an exotic dancer during that time, and many of her co-workers started to notice the abuse she experienced at her husband's hand. He would attack and assault her and control her every move. In early 1990, Sharon became involved with a college student named Kevin Brown. Her co-workers and friends urged her to leave her toxic marriage, take her child, and elope with her lover. She argued that if she even considered such a thing, her husband would take her and her child's lives. In April of 1990, though, Sharon had a change of heart and began plotting her departure. Just when it seemed like her life was going in a positive direction, she lost her life. Her body was found on the side of a highway a few miles from Oklahoma City. Investigators noted that she was surrounded by groceries, and an autopsy revealed that she suffered mass areas of blunt force trauma. It was believed that she was hit by a car and left behind to perish. Franklin later showed up at the hospital to confirm that the woman was his wife, stating that he had fallen asleep while she was walking home from the store. Still, detectives labeled him as a person of interest. The strings holding this strange story together started to loosen, and a jaw-dropping discovery was made. Sharon Marshall wasn't just Frank's wife. She was also his stepdaughter and kidnapping victim. Detectives learned that Sharon Marshall, who also frequently went by the alias Tanya Hughes, was in fact Suzanne Siakis. In 1974, Franklin was dating a woman named Sandy Chapman who had 4 children. Franklin filled the role of stepfather and allegedly took part in caring for the children. When Sandy went to jail for writing bad checks, Franklin's behavior changed and he started to abuse the family. A few months later, Sandy was released and came home to find that her children had been taken. She filed a report, but resources were limited in that area. According to the information found, Franklin dropped a few of the children off at orphanages and kept Suzanne for himself. There's at least one sibling whose whereabouts are unknown. Franklin raised Suzanne while simultaneously abusing and manipulating her. When she was old enough, he obtained fake ID papers and the pair got married. The information was only known by Suzanne and Franklin for the longest time. This twist wasn't just a shock to their friends and colleagues, but to the nation as well. When the story started gaining media attention, Franklin is currently on death row for an unrelated murder. Number 2. Natasha Ryan was a young girl that went missing from her hometown in Rockhampton, Queensland on August 31st, 1998. In accordance to their daily routine, Natasha's mother dropped her off at school early in the morning. That evening, she found her daughter wasn't at school and hadn't returned home either. She reported her missing, and a search swiftly bloomed. The efforts were described as extensive and exhaustive. Time carried on and resources were steadily cut. And despite the heartbreaking consequences, her family assumed that she was dead and left the case alone. A killer named Leonard John Fraser was serving time for a murder in April of 1999 when he confessed to 5 murders as part of a plea bargain. Among his alleged victims was Natasha. While Leonard couldn't provide detailed information about her remains or the conditions of her attack, he was still charged and faced a Supreme Court trial. In 2003, 5 years after her disappearance, and while her accused killer stood trial, Natasha was found alive. This discovery came after a raid on a North Rockhampton home. Officers found her tucked into the cupboard. They took her in for a health evaluation and interrogation. The media instantly caught wind of the discovery, but it was before they had all the facts. Articles and broadcast coverage painted Natasha as a poor victim that had been held captive to live in a cupboard. She explained to police that she was no victim though. She'd run away from home to live with her boyfriend that she was still with and only hid in the cupboard when unfamiliar visitors came by. The baffling twist in this case is that Natasha was alive all along, but it's said that the fact that she willingly vanished and allowed someone to take the blame was even more shocking. Leonard's lawyer shared that Natasha had been found alive, but he didn't call for a mistrial in Leonard's case for reasons unknown. Number 1. Charles Djou Glenowitz was a lieutenant for the Fox Lake, Illinois Police Department when he passed away on September 1st, 2015 at the age of 52. Early that morning, Djou radioed that he was chasing down 3 suspects at an abandoned cement plant. Eventually, he went silent on the radio and failed to respond to check back in for several hours. As a result, officers were sent to the general area where they found Djou's remains. The logical first assumption was that the three unidentified men took the officer's life. On foot, in patrol cars, and on horseback, over 400 officers and volunteers conducted a thorough manhunt for the suspects. They were unable to apprehend anyone, and the search died off for the time being. Djou was given an honorable funeral, seeing as he died in the line of duty. Over 1,000 people attended the funeral and called for flags to be hung at half-staff. The media was covered with stories of the heroic officer and the loss of his life trying to protect the city. In his absence, he became a respected and admired public figure. This facade didn't last long, though. In a disturbing twist, a former police officer started calling the station to inform investigators that Djou had planned his death. The man was nearly arrested for his constant calling and claims. Still, officers decided to take a deeper look into Djou's passing and found that he'd been embezzling money for at least 7 years from the police department program, from the Fox Lake Police Explorer program, which helped the city's youth. But this was just the surface of his crimes. Other possible acts include threatening an emergency dispatcher with a gun, allegations of sexual harassment, and numerous suspensions. Djou grew fearful that he would be exposed thanks to an audit, and rather than becoming a public villain, it would be better for him to set up his own demise and gain honor. It was later found that Djou's wife played a role in the staged killing, as well as many of Djou's other suspicious endeavors. On January 26th, she was indicted for dispersing charitable funds without authority, and for personal benefit, and 2 counts of money laundering. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this narration, maybe consider checking out my personal channel at youtube.com/ty_knots. And if you like this video, be sure to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads.